Guess what's got two thumbs and a brand new video rig? So I've had a bunch of people asking me about how this whole thing worked, and basically it's... Ooh, no. Actually, I'm about to launch in on a pretty dry, really detailed technical explanation of how I put the whole thing together, so if you're just here for the music, I'd recommend waiting until the next video, or checking out one of these fine YouTube channels. So, gear. I've got my guitar, outputting into my Fractal Axe 2, which goes into my Focusrite Sapphire Pro 40 interface, and then goes right into Ableton. I've got my nifty triple play MIDI pickup made by Fishman that takes everything I play on the guitar and outputs analogous MIDI notes. And then I've got my Livid Instruments guitar wing that I'm using as a controller. I've got these three pads set up to spit out one CC value as a key whenever I push it down to just turn stuff on and off, and then the pressure to another one that gives me a range of values. This last one down here is just set up to spit out a MIDI note. I use that for the dubsteppy bass hits at the end of the second A section. Sliders are set up much like the pads. They send out a key value when I push to turn stuff on and off, and then another value that is the position. And then finally, I've got my Behringer FCB 1010 floorboard that spits out MIDI CC values, and I'm just using those to launch a few clips. Alright, let's check out some sounds. First, let's listen to a little bit of my backing track. So that's a bunch of samples. The acoustic sounding drums are Slate SSD4, and the wind effects are made using Massive and its noise generator. Pretty simple, nothing special there. Okay, so now let's go through section by section. So this whole thing is basically through composed, and the A section is the first thing I wrote, and it's what the entire thing is pretty much based on. It's also the most complicated to perform, and I'll explain why that is in just a second. So here's my main guitar sound. So this gets used throughout the entire track, and it's just the Axe with a high gain amp model. I believe it's the Marshall JVM. It's got a bit crusher and a really, really heavy gate on it. Now, I'm not actually using a cab emulator on it, and the reason for that is that the cabs usually really tame the crazy high end that comes out of an amp, and that high end actually really, really helps this guitar sound meld with the synths that I'm using and make it one cohesive unit, which is what I was chasing. Then for a few keynotes, I will also have a smart harmonizer come on inside the Axe, and that just transposes everything that I'm playing down a minor sixth in the key. It sounds like this. And that just gets turned on and off via MIDI messages sent to the Axe from Ableton. Okay, now here's the synth that is paired with that guitar sound, and it'll play everything that the guitar plays. So that's just a Massive patch with a really sharp attack on it. It makes it sound kind of like it's being picked, which again is to meld it more with the guitar sound. So here's both of them stacked. So both the guitar and the synth will do pitch bends responding to the pressure of one of the guitar wing buttons, and they'll do vibrato based on an LFO. And the guitar in the Axe is just a pitch block. Inside Massive, it's just a macro and using its internal vibrato function. And then I have both of those grouped together in Ableton so I can compress them and EQ them together and such to continue making them sound more like a unit. And then on top of that, I have this craziness set up. And that's just a combination of an auto panner, a tremolo, and a bit crusher with all of the salient parameters attached to the slider's position value, and then the key value just turns the whole thing on and off. Okay, so this is where it gets complicated. I have the bass, which is a sample, stretched across an octave in battery. It goes along the lower register of my guitar from G to G. And the point of that is so that I can play the main part of the riff like this. And I pick that out with my middle finger, and meanwhile I'm playing the low E on the main synth and guitar, but it doesn't register with the bass. It lets me get that movement in there. However, the rest of the bass line is kind of syncopated, or with the parts that aren't, it didn't sound that good when I tried to play it along with the lead guitar parts. So what I decided to do is instead of trying to play it, I actually trigger it from my FCB 1010, and it's just a clip in Ableton. So I'll play the first part of every riff, and then hit the pedal on the FCB 1010 to trigger the rest of it. So this is the last instrument in the A section. It gets used for that initial wah, and then I leave it on under a couple of the leads, and then I use it for those dubsteppy hits that I mentioned earlier. And it's just an FM8 patch that I use for that grimy filter sweep, and then the Arturia Mini V Moog synth for the sub bass. The B section is basically just a couple little tweaks of the sounds that I use in the A section. The guitar sound is the same, but I use a slightly different synth on top of it. It's basically the same patch, but just tweaked around a little bit to smooth it out a bit more. There's also a new bass sound. So that's just a big massive patch with a super distorted version of the bass sample from the A section on top of it. So the last thing is the lead that comes in on the second time through the B section. So here I loop what I played the first time through the B section and then play with that sound on top of it. For the run at the end, I combine it with my main guitar sound, and then there's a tremolo with the rate attached to the slider that leads to the big climax at the end of it. This brings us to the last part of the song, and yet another bass sound. Once again, it's a massive patch. I have the filter controlled by the Performer step sequencer inside of Massive, and then I have an Ableton effect on the input that sustains the MIDI notes I send into it. This lets me do that crazy stuff where I just hit some random stuff on the strings that might be muted and not actually make sounds, and it'll sustain and make it do some crazy stuff. I also have the guitar sound coming in on every other quarter note, along with the snare hits for some added flavor. And then once I play this one time through, I'll trigger a clip of the basic pattern that I'm playing, and then play this pad on top of it. So this is just a pad sound, and I'm using the pressure of the guitar wing pad that I'm hitting to control the filter opening and closing. And that's actually it. That's the last new sound that I use. Everything else has appeared earlier in the song at some point. So the lead that comes in over this is just the B section lead combined with my main guitar sound. So that gets looped the first 2 times through I play it, and then I play over those 2 loops 2 more times leading up to the big ending section, which is just that big bass sound with the A section guitar stack on it. And then the ending is just the B section synth, lead synth, and guitar playing harmonics over top of the pad sound looped. And that's it. So hopefully that demystifies some stuff, and it wasn't too long-winded. I know it was at least a little long-winded, but I have a lot of cool stuff and a lot of new music planned, so if you're interested in what I'm doing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and if you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud, what have you, as @TheBishopGame. Thanks for watching. Is that recording? I hope that's recording. Yes, that's recording. And then inside of Massive, and then I forgot what I was going to say. a combination of will react to motherfucker side of massive. It's got elocution, and then finally, damn it.
It's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. I don't like saying C-section.